Okay, I think I am going to call the meeting to order. As it turns out, our chair, Christian Horvath, had another obligation at this point, and we're hoping he'll be able to join us. But until and unless he does, I will chair the meeting. And I'm Jackie Backrack, and I'm the executive director of the South Bay Cities Council of Governments. There's too many people here for us to all introduce ourselves. So I would ask that if you are going to make a comment or speak on any item, could you say where you're from? And so we can at least introduce ourselves as we're going. I do want to, though, recognize Councilman Bill Uphoff from Lomita. We're delighted to have you here today. Thank you. Okay, then we have meeting notes from the last meeting. And this is one of those meetings where not everybody was at the last meeting. So I'm just going to ask anybody that might have been there if they have any comments or any issues that they've got for the last meeting. And if not, we'll just receive and file those meeting notes. Before we go on to talk about the agenda for the day, there is somebody else I do want to introduce. I was reading the meeting notes for those of you that read them, and it said that a catastrophe had happened because we had lost Grace Farwell. But I am extremely pleased to announce, and I thought I would do this right at the beginning so that you would all acknowledge and know who our next replacement is. We have offered the position, and he has accepted, to Ronson Chu, and Ronson is on the Zoom right now, and we're very, very excited. Ronson will start on Tuesday, and so at whatever you say today will be direction to him to hit the ground running. And we're just incredibly delighted. And Ronson, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm really looking forward to working with you all on South Bay issues. I live in North Redondo, so I'm a constituent as well. And yeah, I'm really excited. I've been somewhat attuned to the issues in the South Bay. And one of the most rewarding things I worked on last year was I got to help some of our council members here in Redondo Beach answer questions from constituents about the pallet shelter. There was a lot of community questions regarding that project, and so able to assist there, and that was really rewarding. And so I'm very happy to be here and turning that kind of into more of a full-time endeavor now. So yeah, I think in the next few weeks you'll be hearing from me, and would love to hear how I can help.
And Ronson does come to us from Lhasa, so we're all taking from each other, I guess. So anyway, Ronson's email, I guess, will be ronson@southbaycities.org. It will be functional starting on Tuesday. So he's your guy, and please send any comments or questions or anything to him. I also want to introduce, we've just been joined by Zane Obaji, the new, not new anymore, I guess, councilman from Redondo Beach. Thank you, Zane, for being here. And so now we can go on to our first speaker. And I would like to ask, there's been a slight change. So I'm going to just leave it to Lori. Lori, can you explain who our speaker is and introduce them?
Okay, sure. So yes, I got the last minute change. And I'm terribly sorry, but I don't know how to pronounce your name. I don't want to mess it up. But is it Yvette?
Yvette Samdalian.
Okay, what she said. Okay, and she is the director of permanent housing with Lhasa, and she'll be presenting an update on the EHV, the Emergency Housing Voucher Program. And David, you want to go ahead and share the screen? And Amy Perkins is also here, who will be, I think, commenting on this too.
Thank you, Lori. Hello, everyone. My name is Yvette Samdalian. I'm the Director of Permanent Housing with Lhasa. As Lori mentioned, Amy Perkins is also my counterpart and has been initiating a lot of the EHV process before me joining with Lhasa. I'm really excited to give this presentation for all of you, and glad to have some council members here and all the rest of the team. And just to also highlight, we will miss Ronson with Lhasa, but you have a great staff with you. The last 2 months I've worked with Ronson, he is just an outstanding employee, and it will be a great asset to the organization and in homeless services. So with that, I'll go to my presentation for the EHV overview. Next slide, please. As you know, we have received through the American Rescue Plan funding for emergency housing vouchers. And we have received about 6,800 vouchers LA County wide. Lhasa is only the referring agency for these vouchers. The vouchers are directly provided to the housing authorities. The emergency housing vouchers do not come with services. This is very similar to the Section 8 program. They do require the direct referrals from our coordinated entry system. We must also use equity lens for Black, Indigenous, people of color. We have very strict deadlines related to the emergency housing voucher program, and that we have to have all of our vouchers issued no later than September 30th of 2023, and we must have 95% of our vouchers leased up by summer of 2022. So very strict deadlines associated with that. The one positive with respect to EHV vouchers is that they go through some the similar background for the criminal background as the COC vouchers, but there are some waivers for that. So we will be able to waive some of the fair market rents. Some of the vouchers can go 120% of the rent available. The owners are able to self-certify the inspections for the units and until the annual. And then we are able to have our participants self-certify some of the information, income, social security, date of birth, application in their application to expedite the EHV referral process. Next slide, please. With respect to the EHV allocations, and a lot of what Amy, in addition to some other team members at Lhasa, did is working with all of our housing authorities that receive direct allocations for the EHV. The 6,800 is allocated in these respectful matter. The large applications are with HACLA and LACDA. City of Glendale, City of Pasadena, and City of Long Beach, being that their own continuum of care, they receive their own EHV applications, and those applications will be utilized within their PHS. And Amy has already worked with all of the housing authorities and have executed MOUs with respect to the process of referrals for the EHVs. Next slide, please. Some of the implementation process that we went through as we learned about the EHV vouchers being available to us, a Lhasa team was able to coordinate with meetings with HUD to determine some of the priorities. We were able to have joint COC board meetings and a CS council.
Every day it seems to go down.
Sorry.
Yeah.
A joint COC board and a CS council policy. We're able to provide them with overview of the EHV implementation process and timeline. The CS policy approved our interim EHV housing policy. Again, we've executed all of our MOUs with our housing authorities. We've already launched over 1,000 webinars with our participating agencies, service providers. We continue to do these presentations at many tables, including the deputies, on an ongoing basis. We begun with our application process with HACLA and LACDA with referrals late June, and Lhasa had begun reviewing those applications and had been submitting those batches to HACLA and LACDA beginning July 2nd, and continue to do so on an ongoing basis, and we're working on issuance of the vouchers. Next slide, please. With respect to the eligible target population, next slide, please. There are certain target populations that, again, was approved by our CS Council, and it's also what HUD has recommended is in different priorities. We have here before you, group 1 is our eligible households who are fleeing domestic violence, attempting to flee dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking. So for all of these households, seeking an emergency transfer through our Lhasa policy for the Wawa will be going through the emergency transfer plan and be able to participate in the EHV application process. Our second priority group is our recently homeless, for whom providing rental assistance will prevent the households becoming homeless or having to be at risk of instability. And these are the clients and participants in our time-limited subsidy programs, such as rapid rehousing, recovery rehousing, that would be able to lease in place and be eligible to be referred to the EHV application and receive the voucher if eligible. And then homeless, next slide, please. The third category, which is group B, continues, is that our folks that are recently homeless, for whom the rental assistance will prevent the households from becoming homeless, and they have high risk of housing instability or unsheltered on our streets. Those population will be also eligible and continue to make referrals as a priority. And then our fourth category approved by HUD, which is also the recommendations, is at risk of homelessness. Households that are at risk of becoming homeless are also eligible for the EHV application and the priority. Next slide, please. How does matching work in terms of the referrals? Basically, at this moment, both housing authorities and the rest of the housing authorities will be submitting their referrals to Lhasa, and our matchers will work with matching the clients based on the group priority. So priority one, as discussed, would be our DV population and the safety transfers in that aspect. But at the same time, we're not delaying any of the other referrals for the priorities. We continue to make referrals for everybody else in terms of applications. We've hired about 14, 15 temps that are working through reviewing these applications on a daily basis and submitting to the housing authorities. And they're matched in the priority group as discussed earlier in the process. Next slide, please. We are looking
early.
We are looking at also at equity tools. We're working with the providers and with partnering with different strategies on equity. We're looking at the data informed for our prioritization and some of our matching strategies. Just to make a note here, because of our fair housing laws, we cannot prioritize or match based on race. We must also identify other strategies to bring the equity, resource, and distribution utilization. So therefore, Lhasa team is meeting with providers, and we're looking at developing a dashboard with respect to looking at some of the avenues for equity distribution of the EHV vouchers. Some of the things we've done uniquely is we've outreached to the smaller providers in SPA 6. We've made presentations at the coalition meetings. We continue to outreach to AIN providers. We have targeted fairs that we implemented in September and will continue to implement with respect to PRK closeout sites and demobilization. And our outreach continue to work with interim housing providers in the city of LA that have high Latinx representation. Next slide, please. In terms of the equity tool and framework that we're currently using and how we're matching our participants, we are looking through our most disadvantaged communities with respect to our referrals. We're also looking at assessment of our increased vulnerability to our severe illness or death in the households that would be impacted by COVID-19, or if folks have any other medical conditions, regardless of their vaccination status. We're also looking at equity and distribution of resources based on SPAs and high rate of homelessness, and then justice involvement. And specifically at this moment or any time throughout this process, we are looking for our partners to give us any suggestions or information on how we can look to make sure that equity is maintained. And we work with our providers to provide the additional feedback and do a performance evaluation on the equity tool that we continue to develop and analyze as we're getting these applications referred out. Next slide, please. With respect to our process and flow and progress, next slide, please. So with the EHV process, we've basically identified point of contact with each of the housing and authorities and work with referring the assessments through the HMI system that's online. Our matchers continue to work and review the applications for eligibility, targeting and reviewing equity. They continue to match the resources in our resource management system, the RMS. And then our point of contact basically sent the HV applications to the point of contacts at the housing authorities. And then what we continue to do is inform the housing authorities and coordinate with them on a weekly basis in meetings with respect to eligibility, their process, timeline for the housing authorities, and how quickly they can issue the vouchers to the participants. Next slide, please. So this is just updates from the two major housing authorities, and I'll give a little bit update on the smaller housing authorities. So with respect to LACDA applications, this is as of last Friday, we at Lhasa have submitted 82 applications. So on a weekly basis to LACDA, we submit anywhere from 50 to 100 applications. Total applications we've submitted to LACDA is 503 since July. Applications that are pending for processing that we need to submit to LACDA, we have 92 pending at this moment. And then we have around 200 applications that we still have and assessments that we still have to review, that our staff continue to review on a daily basis. Thus far, from July referrals to August 27th, LACDA has issued 44 vouchers. Next slide, please. For the HACLA applications, we submit around 100 to 200 applications on a weekly basis. Last week, we submitted 174. So total applications to date for HACLA has been over 1,300. We do have about 198 pending applications for HACLA and about 4,000 estimated assessments between HMIS and paper applications that have been submitted for our staff to review and sent to the housing authorities. And same as LACDA, oddly, both housing authorities have issued 44 vouchers to our participants. And as we continue to update and review and analyze the process for the smaller housing authorities, we will be soon reporting out on how the housing authorities are doing with respect to our referrals to them and their ability to issue vouchers. But as you saw in the previous slide, they're much more smaller in terms of the EHV allocations. Next slide, please. In terms of services and funding and some of our system challenges and what we need to do, as I mentioned earlier, part of the EHV vouchers, basically Lhasa is just a referring agency. And what we've learned and heard, and because the vouchers don't come with any service dollars, what we're looking at is developing opportunities with Measure H and ICMS, working with DMH and DHS to identify those ICMS slots for some of our participants who require intensive case management. So in terms of timeline, we're looking at fiscal year in the next couple of fiscal years, 2 or 3 fiscal years. We're looking at transitioning folks from the rapid rehousing, recovery rehousing, and supportive services into the EHV program as they can continue to transition in place, and looking at utilizing the ICMS and Measure H funding for case management and housing services, navigation and retention services. And then also working with our FSP programs to make sure that services are available to them. And at this moment, our focus, immediate focus, is working with our PRKs and interim housing programs and targeting unsheltered population at different sites in order to get the HV applications completed and submitted. Next slide, please. Some of our system challenges that we have been working through, including our housing authorities and our service providers, is continuous challenge with staffing capacity. As we all continue to leverage our existing services, we've been able to provide additional flexibility to our service agencies to do budget amendments to increase their staffing capacity in order to be able to support with the EHV launching and the aggressive application referrals. We continue to work and are in need of additional units and continue to work on expanding our unit acquisitions. continue to work with Path Lisa, our RPSS program, and Brilliant Corners to expand our tenancy support and expand our unit acquisitions. We have developed a EHV website on our system and can communicate so that all the FAQs and any resources available to everyone is available on our website. And I can share that in the chat after my presentation. And then just continue to look through some funding so that we can continue to do progressive engagement with our service providers that are on time limited subsidies and coordinating with DMH and DHS on some of this. And then continue to monitor our equity with respect to MDCs and developing that policy and looking at strategies to make sure it's equitable allocation of the EHV applications. Next slide, please. Yeah, I believe this, so this is, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And if I'm not able to answer, Amy Perkins is here to help out, as she's been the outstanding runner of the EHV application with all of our housing authorities before I came on board with Lhasa. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. If you can raise your hand or use the raised hand function, that would be great. But in the meantime, I guess I don't understand how you have, is it just a staffing issue that you have hundreds and hundreds of vouchers you've submitted and only 44 have been issued? And the second part of that is, when a voucher has been issued, how long does it take for a person to get into housing?
Thank you, Jackie. That's a great question. I'll take a stab at it, and Amy, please help out if I miss anything else. Basically, as we begun rolling and implementing the EHV process, we had to bring a lot of our housing authorities in to quickly develop a plan. And we have been sent, at first, we were able to have assessments completed manually with our service providers until we were able to implement our HMIS assessment in the system. And because we didn't have staffing, we've hired 14 temps to help support with the application assessments, a quality review for the applications before we submit to the housing authority. Now, we've been caught up to date, so 200 applications is not a lot in terms of our pending applications to review. However, we are working with our housing authorities now that we've made a lot of referrals to continue to work through having them expedite the voucher issuance process. And we will continue as we develop our dashboard to have that availability with respect to our time submission, our referrals submitted to the housing authorities, and their ability to issue some of the vouchers, as they have to go through verifying client eligibility and some information before vouchers are issued. Amy, please help out if I missed anything.
Oh, that was great, Yvette. I think the only thing I would add, Jackie, is we have to commend HACLA, who actually hired up 30 staff just to support EHV. So they're getting a lot of applications coming in. A lot of the work that we're doing with them right now is to streamline the application process. So just because we send over hundreds of applications, if they, for example, can't read half of them, they have to come back to us. And so we're very excited. Also, I think a lot of people on this call are familiar with our universal housing application that we'll be launching hopefully this month in coordination with EHV, which will really mitigate a lot of those challenges we see around like an application being illegible. How do you say it? Illegible. They can't read it. And so we're going to be launching our universal housing application, which will have all of the questions answered online. We will submit it electronically over to the housing authority. It will have built-in logic. So if you miss a question or your answers to the questions aren't consistent, it will flag that for you. So I think what we'll see then, honestly, Jackie, is a great increase in the number of vouchered issues and the number of vouchers issued. Because when they get all the apps, they'll be able to quickly process them and move them forward. I also want to commend our housing authorities, most of whom, both our 2 larger and then the 11, a little smaller, but still very strong partners for us, are taking a lot of the waivers that EHV is allowed to offer through HUD. And so clients can self-certify the Social Security number, self-certify the ID, self-certify their income. And so as a result, the housing authorities aren't held up waiting for those documents to be submitted.
Thank you. I'm asking, I don't see any hands up, but I do want to acknowledge we've been joined by Torrance Councilman George Chin and Torrance City Manager Aram Chaparian. So thank you for joining us. Are there any questions? I don't see any hands up. Oh, Nancy Wilcox.
Hi, thank you, Jackie, and thank you for the great presentation. My name is Nancy Wilcox, and I'm the one of the co-chairs for the local regional homeless coalition here. You know, as you probably know, we have 4 housing authorities here in the South Bay. Can you talk a little bit about how referrals are getting to them, and maybe talk about, you know, whether they're also going to be using this universal application, and just talk a little bit about how they're being looped in, and maybe you can also talk about how many referrals they've received to date. Thank you.
Have that
Yeah.
information.
I have no numbers for information. I'm so sorry for the referrals to small PHAs. We can certainly share that with you, Nancy. And I think, you know, honestly, you and SPA 8, and this is one reason that we actually are trying to schedule a call specifically with Sherry and Harbor Interfaith, is because the jurisdiction is covered by so many public housing authorities. And so we want to make sure that we're referring to the appropriate one. Let me tell you where it gets a little bit confusing. What we didn't want to do on the referring application that that the clients, that the case managers send to Lhasa, we didn't want to just say, in what PHA should this client be? Because what we expected then was that a lot would choose, say, beach communities where they may not have any history. And so we'd get 500 people would say, I'm supposed to be in Santa Monica, for example, or Redondo Beach. And so we didn't allow that. And instead, we're trying to build sort of these safeguards on the back end. So for example, let's say someone is transitioning in place. So they get their emergency housing voucher. They're living in a unit on rapid rehousing. We're going to give them this voucher and they get to stay in that unit with this new subsidy. Well, we have to make sure, of course, that we refer that client to the right housing authority. So we've built a lot of logic into our HMIS system so that we're basically cross-referencing these maps, GISing all the addresses that come in so that it triggers for us the appropriate PHA referral. I don't think it's 100% yet. And there's a lot of nuances at those borders. And so we're still streamlining that. But honestly, I feel like that's where we're going to get a little bit touchy, Nancy. It's easy, obviously, if we're referring to HACLA or LACDA, but for some of the smaller ones, it's a little stickier. And we're just going to continue to iterate that if we have to. Like, I know something came to us recently from Harbor that there were, I think it was 2 clients that wanted to transition in place in one of the smaller PHAs, and we gave them a HACLA. They were matched to a HACLA application. So it's like, okay, no, we're going to unmatch that one. Don't complete that full application with that housing authority, and we'll rematch to the appropriate PHA. So hopefully as we iterate this, we'll get better at it. But it's confusing, I'll be honest. And so we're just trying to build the safeguards that honestly, we just need better maps for each small PHA so that we can match appropriately.
Thank you. Sherry, did you had your hand up? It's down now?
Yeah, just real quick. So, and Amy, really appreciate all the offline conversations that you've been willing to take. I know we had just talked last week too, so we're getting a lot of the EHV vouchers rolling out and not even knowing too that, the Housing Authority City of LA and Housing Authority County of LA, that we can cross jurisdiction place people. And that was something too that wasn't real well known. So I think, making sure that we're getting that information out to the providers, and being as flexible with the utilization as we can. Yeah. But Yvette, you had mentioned too about justice involved. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
And Sherry, before you do that, would you tell everybody where you're from?
Oh, I'm sorry, Sherry Weaver from Harbor Interfaith Services.
Thank you.
Amy, would you be able to help with that question?
That's interesting, Sherry. I'm trying to think about direct outreach to justice involved populations, and I'm unaware of that specific outreach, unless what we're talking, maybe what it's referencing is our partnership with ODR. So we do have a strong partnership with the county's ODR program, and they have already started very actively making referrals. So that's the only thing I can think of right now.
What is ODR?
So they're the Office of, I'm so sorry for using the acronym, the Office of Diversion and Reentry, and they work with people with formerly incarcerated and people who are justice involved. And I know that they've been on a lot of our EHV planning calls. One of the things I want to call out to what Sherry said, and I was happy when Sherry brought that up to us, HACLA and LACDA have executed this interagency agreement. So it doesn't matter if you get an LACDA or HACLA voucher, you can go within either jurisdiction and use your voucher. I know both, just for the record, and if any of you, I see some familiar faces from the PHAs, both of them are very open to executing additional interagency agreements. Some PHAs don't want that, and I understand why they wouldn't. But others, if you want to execute such a partnership, please let me know or reach out to the leadership there. They're very open to that execution, just for the record. And then also to Sherry's point, we do have our EHV FAQ. So frequently asked questions, and that is posted on our EHV webpage, which is on the Lhasa website. And we're trying to drive traffic there. We're sending out emails from like our constant contact, which goes to our whole mailing list. So people will get used to going there, and so they can see when things change. And then we're also doing weekly office hours that case managers can attend. They can't always get there, we know though, but we're trying to keep it, things are changing so quickly. So we are trying to get the information out.
Any other questions? Okay, I want to thank you, Amy and Yvette. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you so much, Jackie.
So we'll go on to Path, and instead of Courtney Reed making the presentation, we're going to have Haley and Anna.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Haley Fuselier from Path. Anna will be doing most of the presentation. So Anna, take it away.
Yeah, like how Haley said, I am Anna. I am the new program manager for SPA 8's outreach team. Here on the first slide, we have the new outreach team. There have been a few changes since the last time this presentation was done, I believe. On the left-hand side, you have myself, you have Jillian, you have Stephanie, and then you also have our newest team member, which is Rabia. Next slide. So this is Jillian. And she mainly handles the Redondo Beach area, the beach cities. On Mondays, she goes to Redondo and Gardena. Tuesdays is usually LA Hobbs or Wilmington. Wednesdays is Carson and Redondo. Thursdays, Redondo and Torrance. On Fridays, she does usually follow up with participants, does retention, case conferencing, and documentation. But this schedule is based on case management appointments or as needed by participants. So she can be in either of these cities, but this is mainly where she's at. Next slide. Here we have Stephanie and Rabia. They handle on Mondays, Wilmington. On Tuesdays, they can be found in LA Hub or Harbor Cities or Lomita. Wednesdays will be Hawthorne and Lawndale. Thursdays, El Segundo and West Athens. And Fridays, again, follow-up, retention, case conferencing, and documentation. Right now, unfortunately, we're a little short staffed. So they're helping each other out. So sometimes you can see Jillian and Rabia in Redondo or Jillian and Stephanie in Wilmington. So, but we're trying to help each other out, but this is mainly the breakdown of our city. Next slide. We have continued using our LA Hub website and requests. We do get the request from Ari, our coordinator. Next slide. And here we have the breakdown of the cities. From July and August, we have had an additional 11 requests, making it a grand total of 59 since July of 2020. And then below, we have the city breakdown. Carson in the last 2 months have had 1 request, Wilmington 1, El Segundo 3, Torrance with 2, and Redondo Beach with 4. Next slide, please. We have continued our community connection. We have continued our joint outreaches. We've added a new encampment, the Gardena encampment. And we've also continued going to the tiny home villages. Our meal givings are still going on. We are going to St. Andrews, St. James. We're doing share bread at First United Methodist. We're still in communication with the police department in Gardena and Redondo Beach. And we're also continue working with Doors of Hope, Beacon of Light. We do work with the ABHs, but not frequently. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is me. So when we redid our contract, it was before COVID. And what we decided to change this year was instead of referrals that we were monitoring, it would be things that were attained. For instance, if we were going to refer you to a mental health clinic, we wouldn't count the outcome until you went into the clinic and got the intake. However, with COVID, so many of these agencies were closed. And so as you can see from some of the outcomes, they do not look as though we made them. But again, it has a lot to do with, we didn't count referrals. We were just counting those that were made. But if we go to the next slide, this is all of the things that we were able to do. So over this past year, you can see the referrals and the linkages kind of shifted to what was available. And we were really lucky during COVID that there was a lot to offer our participants in tiny homes, Project Room Key, Project Home Key, as well as to what we just talked about were the vouchers. So as you can see, we've referred 73 individuals to those vouchers. We've already had a few matches and follow-up appointments, so things are happening rather quickly, and it is very exciting when that happens. And again, we were able to, with the Project Room Key, as you can see, positive exits 165, so it's quite a large number in comparison to probably last year because of the interim resources that we have. And we just want to say again, thank you to District 4, Han's office, for the CDBG money, because we were able to help 28 individuals either get into a temporary place before they got into permanent housing or get them straight into permanent housing. And Anna, I don't know if you have anything with this slide.
Yeah, this is mainly like showing our efforts aside from like the numbers. I know the numbers kind of look a little low, but as Kaylee said, COVID was pretty hard to deal with and it made it a little bit more difficult, but we didn't stop working. We continued making it our best efforts to help the participants out. Next slide. Here we have one of the success stories. This is Eugene. He was originally from the city of Wilmington. He was homeless for 2 years after being released from prison. And Jillian was the one who came across him, and he was actually matched through CES and was placed in a subsidized housing unit, and we helped him with the move-in, rental assistance, and any documentation assistance he needed. And when, like, as you can see at the bottom, he was very thankful and really glad to be finally housed. Next slide. Here we have Tina and Mary, their mom and daughter. They were from the Redondo Beach area. Now they live in a 1-bedroom apartment that they share. And we were able to house them in collaboration with Recovery Rehousing. So that was a team effort, honestly, from both departments, COG and Recovery, and we finally got them housed. Next slide. And then here you see a little bit more of the collaboration. On the left-hand side, you have Jillian in a joint outreach with Ari from Lhasa. In the middle, we have Stephanie and Jillian collaborating with Rapid Rehousing and Recovery Rehousing. They attended like a mini joint outreach together because they were trying to search for participants that outreach were in contact with or had rapport with. So they joined forces and worked with them. And then on the right-hand side, we have Ravi, our newest team member, along with Jillian, Alameda McCoy. Next slide, please. Here we have our future considerations. As a team, we want to ask for, from the cities more affordable permanent resources in each city. So this will prevent the participants or the individuals from jumping to city to city. What this means is if they want to remain in, say they're in the city of Gardena and they want to live in the city of Gardena, they have that option or they have those resources available to them, and they don't have to go out of their comfort or out of their city to an unknown area possibly. Another consideration that we would like to offer is utilizing COG funds for interim housing solutions, just tiny home villages, bridge homes, shelters that are longer term, or meal programs in each city as well. The meal programs and the other resources also can prevent city jumping as well. Here you have Courtney Reed's contact information as well as mine. If you ever have any questions or any concerns, you can go ahead and direct us an email. And I'll put it in the chat as well.
And it's Ari from Harbor Interfaith. Sorry, I think no, it's okay. It's okay. Sometimes when you're going really quickly, Ari has been instrumental also in helping with our Project Home Key that we are hoping will open in late November. So just making sure that the area that we know the outreach collaborations as well as the spots that we might be able to target to get people inside faster with Project Home Key. So thank you to Ari and Harbor Interfaith.
Yeah, he's
And
the one, for the Gardena encampment. It's for one of the PHKs that will be opening in Gardena.
Yes. And that's it.
Great. So any questions for Path? Put up your hands or raise your hand. Jackie, you don't have, oh, George Chen has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. Thank you for the presentation. I just saw your previous slide, I think, and a few of them with respect to city jumping. I'm trying to understand what that really means. And here's what I'm thinking. I'm assuming that these are interim housing and eventually we want to get them jobs so they could be self-reliant someday in the future. But I'm trying to understand, maybe unpack how you get in this situation of city jumping.
Well, I think that when there's one resource in an area and it might be short term, somebody might go to that city, or you hear of services in one city and you might try to not register, but kind of go to that city. It also has to do with these cities that are sometimes close together. Let's say Harbor Interfaith is outreaching in Lawndale and Path is outreaching in Hawthorne. There is a chance that both teams might meet them in both areas, and we need to figure out which city they're in. However, if what we're saying is that if each city had their own permanent housing, then there wouldn't be the need to travel from city to city, because we could actually permanently house people in the city where they are a resident in at the current time. Or long-term. I think a lot of our participants either grew up in their cities and want to stay there. And so we'd like to also house them there because they were at one point housed there or went to high school there and things like that.
I see. Okay, I was just thinking that if we're able to get someone on the streets, some way to get a job so they're independent, then after that, then the place they live would be just like any of us who needs to find a place to live, right? It'll be wherever they could find something they can afford.
Yes, if someone is capable of working, and let's say they don't have a car, we would want to house them near their employment so they could keep their employment. For those that are not necessarily able to work, we would want to keep them in a community that they're most familiar with and where they're connected to.
Okay, thank you. I'll noodle on that a little longer. Thank you.
Any other questions? Jackie, is your hand up? Jackie Arcos?
Yes, it is. Sorry, guys, I'm working off my phone today, so it's smaller. I wanted to ask.
Jackie, would you say where you're from?
City of Gardena. Sorry. I was wondering, you said Path had a PHA building in Gardena?
Sorry, I don't know why. I think when you Google, it used to be called Travel Lodge Gardena. It's not in Gardena. It's in Los Angeles. However, we just keep calling it Gardena because that's what the hotel's name used to be. I'm sure you were like, what's going on? It's not.
Yeah, that's why I was like, wait, time out. What's going happening in my city? Okay.
Sorry, it has to do with the way it was formerly named. It is off of the 405 on Normandy. So it is Los Angeles. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. All right. Just checking. Wanted to make sure I was in tune with everything.
Bill, did you have a comment? Bill Uphoff?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Where's the Lomita and McCoy encampment? Is that the one down on Lomita Boulevard?
Yes, it is kind of switched locations to where it's no longer at Lomita and McCoy, but just from habit, I think we call it that. So yes, it is the encampment that used to be at Lomita and McCoy, but I believe is now on 90. Oh goodness, Anna, do you know the exact cross street? Sorry.
Well, it's okay. I was just because I'm familiar with the encampment, and I have seen the number of structures, if you will, there go down quite a bit over the recently. So I think appreciate that. The only other observation I had was I noticed Tuesday was the day when outreach is in Lomita. Was that correct?
Those are tentative schedules, but in a non-COVID perfect world, yes, we
Okay,
would be very strategic and scheduled, but yes.
Okay, just because I'd like to be more engaged in that to try and really, you know, target, let's say the 25 homeless people that we've got within the city.
We can connect offline and make sure that we can come up with either a collaboration or a meeting for us to know where, when, and who.
That I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Pat? Okay, I want to thank Haley and Anna once again. And we'll go to Sherry Weaver to talk about CES update.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sherry Weaver, CES Director for Service Planning Area 8. So just a couple of quick program updates. Recovery rehousing, which is literally for our COVID vulnerable individuals. We have, I'm going to call it enhanced rapid rehousing. We have 30 slots that we were given for the service planning area, and we are all full. We've got so far 19 of the 30 slots that have been placed into permanent housing. So we're at about a 63% placement rate, and we're continuing to work with the remaining enrolled folks that are in this program right now. Quick update on prevention. We continue to ensure folks that are connected to any needed legal services. As most people know, the eviction moratorium is getting ready to sunset. So if there are other programs, whether it be legal assistance through our legal aid connections, or even submitting applications for some of the rental assistance that's now coming through the state, we do connect them with that. Other programs that we operate in SPA 8, we have both a Beach Cities contract and City of Torrance contract. And both of those, we have independent people that work out there for outreach and housing navigation in collaboration with the city staff, Department of Mental Health, and local police departments. So that work continues to happen. I'm not going to go deep into LA HOP because I know we've got Ari here today that's going to give us an overview of exactly what LA HOP is. A couple of quick updates for our interim housing sites. Our San Pedro interim housing site currently only has 2 vacancies. We've got 18 permanent housing placements to date. Thank God we just got off of quarantine. We were on quarantine for 2 weeks. It's kind of like hopscotch quarantine throughout the whole county right now with sites that are going under quarantine. San Pedro ABH, since we got off on the interim housing, ABH is now under quarantine. So we currently have 4 vacancies there, 17 permanent housing placements, and our quarantine, provided we clear the second round of testing, should be lifted on September the 7th. Redondo Beach Pallet Shelter has no vacancies, up to 19 permanent housing placements, and knock on wood, cross your fingers, they are not under quarantine right now. But we do, want to be mindful that, we continue to do testing every other week in collaboration with the COVID response team. And one of the things that the quarantine did produce, kind of a positive outcome, is that we've had more residents that have asked about getting the vaccine. So we are going to work with DHS to get vaccines out to the site and get more people vaccinated. And then at all of those respective sites so far, talking about emergency housing vouchers, to date, we have completed 52 applications. We're getting a little fatigued here with completing all these applications, but at the same time, I think we're keeping the perspective that it's raining down resources like we've never seen it before. So really just kind of keeping our nose to the grindstone and getting these applications submitted. And then with our population systems that we oversee, individuals, transitional age youth and families, we are in the very beginnings of this particular contract period, which started on July 1st. So some quick outcomes there too. In our individual system, we've had 5 people assessed. Households housed through rapid rehousing, we have 9. 100% retention to date. And the number of chronically homeless single adults that have been housed via housing navigation is 4. For our transitional age youth program, we have 3 households that have been assessed. We've had 4 that have been placed in permanent housing through rapid rehousing. Again, 100% retention. And we've got, so far through our prevention program, haven't seen anybody that's needed to come in and get enrolled. So I think it's a good sign, but I also think it's indicative of the moratorium on, evictions right now. And then last but not least, our family system. We've got 29 households that have been assessed to date, 13 that have been placed through rapid rehousing. And then we've had another 2 that have actually accessed prevention services that were able to maintain their housing. And then just to leave things on a high note, one of our staff today reported a pretty nice little success story. A dad from San Jose had reported his 24-year-old daughter missing. And we were actually in collaboration with Redondo Beach PD. She was located today in Redondo Beach. So we were able to buy a Greyhound bus ticket, contacted dad, who was over the moon and elated that his daughter was going to be returned to him, drove her down to the bus station in downtown LA. And she is, as we speak, on her way back home to her family in San Jose. So that is all I have for today.
You muted, Jackie.
Thank you. Okay, sorry. Are there any questions or comments? It's a great ending, good news at the end. A lot of statistics. So it's a good thing we don't have a quiz at the end, right? Thank you, Sherry, very much. And we'll go on to Ari Hamilton, who's going to talk about LA Hop. And we've talked about it before, but we figured it's a good time to put it on the agenda again.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ari Hamilton. I'm the outreach coordinator for Service Planning Area 8. I think I'm familiar with most of you, so good seeing those of you that I am, and good meeting those of you who I haven't had the chance to meet yet. And of course, thank you to Lori for inviting me to present on LA Hop today. So there is a slide for questions at the end, but as we go through, feel free to put them in the chat, and my contact information is here on this first slide, just in case any questions pop into your head after the presentation's concluded. Feel free to reach out with those as well. Next slide.
I should say that all presentations are going to be on our website, unless the person presenting doesn't want them, but you'll be able to access them on our website.
Perfect. All right, so I know LA Hop has been something that's been around and available for a while, but I wanted to take this opportunity to, I guess, do something of a refresher, reapproach it, and really break down what it is. So LA Hop is a countywide web-based portal designed between Lhasa and the County Homeless Initiative, with really sort of one central goal or core goal that I want you all to keep in mind, which is to make a single uniform referral process for street outreach requests. So part of that process is both a uniform process for putting in those referrals from the community-facing side, from constituents, from service providers, from first responders, as well as a uniform process from the homeless services side in terms of triaging and assigning and completing those requests. The portal also, again, as part of its goals, has sort of secondary goals of educating the community at large about what outreach teams can and can't do. So when you go onto LA Hop, there's some brief explainers about what resources are available, how outreach operates. And then on the back end of the portal, there are some tools for outreach teams to communicate with one another, to pull data, and really basically to support the work we do in our day-to-day in terms of trying to engage people who are experiencing homelessness on the street. Next slide. So the first thing that I really wanted to get into the weeds of is when we say it's the homeless outreach portal, there is a very specific definition of homelessness that street outreach teams responding to LA HOP go by. And thought it was worth reading aloud, which is an individual that has primary nighttime residence that is a public or private place not meant for human habitation. So when we're thinking about people for whom you can put in LA HOP requests or who can even submit self-referrals over LA HOP, it's really people who are sleeping rough, sleeping in a tent or makeshift, or sleeping in their vehicle. I do see LA HOP requests for other situations that we wouldn't consider appropriate or suitable requests. So those could be people who are at risk of homelessness, right? They've been served a notice, but just haven't been evicted yet. People who are currently staying at a motel, staying in a hospital, and requests for types of homeless service or types of social services that don't fall under homeless services. So while those aren't immediately appropriate requests for street outreach teams, I do want to put a little asterisk there for all of you. Homeless services operates under a no wrong door approach. So if there's ever a situation where you don't know what the right direction is to get someone to a homeless service provider, feel free to use LA HOP and we'll sort out the details on the back end. It's not what the portal was intended for, but if there's a barrier to getting someone connected to services, feel free to put in the request. And again, we'll sort out the details on the back end. It just means that a street outreach team won't be the provider assigned to that request. Next slide. So the outreach portion, right? The type of team who is responding to our LA HOP requests. Street outreach teams are the homeless service program type who basically go out again onto the streets or really any type of property out in the public, including riverbeds, railroad tracks, encampments, our parks and beaches, and try and engage with the people who are living there who, for whatever reason, aren't able to get themselves connected to an access center. And we bring all of the services that you would expect to see in an access center out into the field with us. Street outreach teams are primarily out during daylight hours, and that's for a combination of safety reasons, but also most of the work that we do in terms of supporting people with DMV appointments, calling DPSS, those are things that are only available during the daytime anyways. So our work is most effective during those hours. And outreach comprises a lot of different, within that program type, a lot of different types of teams. So we have generalist teams who are out there to sort of engage people, get a feel for the situation, refer them to an appropriate program. We have specialist teams like our mental health focused teams, DMH Home, focusing on our gravely disabled adjacent population. And we have multidisciplinary teams who have staff who are mental health social workers, substance abuse counselors, physical health nurses, generalists as well thrown in the mix, who are really there to work with clients who have a bit more of a complicated case plan to work through and work on those chemical, physical, mental health components while supporting a housing plan. Next slide. So to give you a picture of what outreach looks like in Spot 8, there are about 25 teams active and comprising 115 to 120 staff members. So there is a really, really solid both breadth and depth of outreach working in Spot 8, working collaboratively together, which is fantastic to see. And those teams work across different populations, different geographies, different priorities. So that's one of the things to keep in mind when submitting an LA HOP request. Part of the reason why we have this uniform process is to make sure that requests are being triaged to a team that has the right specialization in terms of target population, the right specialization in terms of geography, or even just outreach model, right? Whether they're going to be referring someone into a program or whether they'll be walking with them from the moment they meet them to when they're entering their permanent housing solution. Next slide. So a couple brief pointers on what outreach can't do. It's important to keep in mind that we're not going to respond to crime. We're not outfitted to be first responders either in terms of responding to crime or responding to health emergencies. So even though teams are outfitted with nurses in the case of, say, our multidisciplinary teams, if it's a emergency, the appropriate call isn't LA HOP, it's 911. Some other things, LA HOP requests, we shoot for a 72-hour turnaround. It's not an immediate call for assistance. Again, we are. While we understand that homeless services is a crisis service, right? We help people in housing crises. We're not an emergency service. And the reason for that is our outreach teams, case managers might have pre-existing or already scheduled client appointments. They might have a set outreach rotation in terms of specific locations or encampments. So there's just an expectation that it will take some time for them to get around to your request. And the last thing is LA HOP requests don't have a standardized timetable for results or especially immediate results. So when you put in a request and an outreach team goes out and engages with someone, depending on their situation, the housing plan can take any number of forms, basically as diverse as the clientele we serve. So there's a common question, sort of like, I put in a request, when do I expect maybe this person to be moved into shelter, to be moved into housing? The honest answer is always, it depends. Next slide. So the portal itself, hopefully everyone's familiar with it by now, but if you're not, you can get to it at la-hop.org. Alternatively, you can call either 211 or the Lhasa hotline and they will make a request on your behalf. The reason for that is not everyone has access to a web browser, not everyone has access to a smartphone. So we need a way for those people to be able to put in referrals for either themselves or anyone else that they're seeing experiencing homelessness. Next slide. So when you are making an LA HOP request, when you go to that LA-HOP or when you're on the phone with a 211 operator, there's a lot of things you can do to make LA HOP requests more likely to lead to a successful contact. And as importantly, make it easier for the outreach team receiving the request to locate the person and engage them with the right resources in their tool belt. So just some best practices that I've noticed from assigning a lot of these requests. They need to be as detailed as possible, not just in terms of location, but also time of day, right? When are you seeing this person? How long are they staying there? That way the outreach team can schedule their outreach with temps accordingly. Again, making sure that they're appropriate for street outreach type services, that you're not putting in requests for people who are currently staying at a motel, currently in a hospital, situations like that. Including contact information, whether it's for the person you're putting the request in for, or your own contact information. And there's a little toggle that says okay to contact. That means that you're basically allowing the outreach team to reach out to you and say, hey, I didn't see this person on my first attempt. Have they moved? Is there any updates? And that really helps us keep our outreach attempts targeted to the location and needs of the individual and more likely to be closed successfully. And lastly, really being strategic with your use of the portal, that it's not something that you would put in for everyone you see walking down the street, but someone you've seen in a location for a certain amount of time where you're really confident about the information you're putting in, that they're going to be in a certain radius during a specific time. Next slide. So once you've put all that information in the portal, once you've clicked submit, what happens? So any request within the South Bay, within Spot 8, would come to me, but if anywhere in LA County, it would go to the SPA outreach coordinator for that specific area. I review the information in it, the location, the needs that you put in for that individual, and assign it to a specific outreach team based off which one it seems like is the best fit for that individual. I also factor in capacity. So some teams, if their caseloads are bursting at the seams, if they're pulled away, during COVID, a lot of teams were seconded to COVID response activities. I'll also consider their current activities and capacities and which teams are assigned the outreach requests. Once a request is assigned to a team, the team lead has the opportunity to either accept it or decline it. If their team is busy, if they don't feel it's appropriate, they do have that flexibility. There is some back and forth built into the system, which again, is really beneficial to the outreach teams being able to work within their capacity. But if the request is accepted, then it's assigned to team members and they'll make 2 attempts to contact, that first one again falling within 72 hours. For each attempt to contact they make, they'll fill out a little survey saying, did I find the person? Will I follow up again? And hopefully include a few more details on their activities therein. Next slide. So another common question I get is when you are the reporter, like what information do I get back from putting in a request, right? If you're really interested to see what the results are. As service providers, we won't be able to provide case management or client level information. And that's built into LAHOP, where there are basically 6 standard auto emails based off of what happened with the request. So the ideal one to get back is contact made. That means the team went out, found the person you were discussing, and has started engaging with them for services. Again, just because contact has been made doesn't mean there's a case plan set in stone or a set timetable yet. Not able to locate means that they weren't there for the 2 attempts. Safety concern means that the team went out there, but there was something about either the location or the individual that gave them pause. I'll say the most common safety concern that we see is based around freeway traffic. So if you're putting in a request for the side of the freeway, just be aware that there might be a safety concern, but just because it's closed as a safety concern doesn't mean we won't work around how to outreach there safely and follow up at a later time. Inappropriate request might mean that it was for someone who's already housed, already sheltered, already serving, hopefully pretty self-explanatory. It was someone already connected to an outreach team, and not enough info basically means I got a request saying mail, and that might be the only description I have to work with. And I'll typically close those out just because teams need a bit more meat to hook into to find the person you're discussing. So with that, I know there was a bit of a whirlwind tour through the world of LAHOP and outreach. So are there any questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you very much. I can't see, you want to stop sharing the screen? Okay. Any comments, questions, hands up? Anybody? Okay, I don't see any hands. Thank you so much, Ari. We really appreciate you coming today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Okay, then I'm going to go to Lori for client aid funds to talk about where we are with that.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. Lori Jacobs with the South Bay City Council of Governments, identifying myself, Jackie. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for your patience while I've been trying to fill these big shoes that Ronson's going to help with starting next week. So thank you very much. I'm just waiting for David to pull up the client aid. And thank you to Ari and Sherry and Haley and Anna for those great presentations and good news. So the client aid process, looked at it, it seemed like it was a little bit cumbersome. So took another look at it, see if we could simplify it and make it easier for the cities to use, because we have funds available and we want to help you out. So we're going to be sending out a new form. Basically, I want the cities to know the requests come from the cities. The deadline to send me a request for approval is December 23rd, and the deadline to send in a reimbursement form will be December 31st. So I've outlined here very easy steps. So the first step, you don't need to fill out a form. Send me an email with the situation, the person's name. We're looking for a weekend at a motel, who maybe the service provider is. We want to make sure you're connected with a service provider, that there's some case management, that we're not just putting them in a motel and leaving them there. So I will get back to you right away with an approval or let you know that we need more information. Okay. Step 2, after you get the approval and you use the services. Okay. So the city will be responsible to pay for the services up front, because this is a reimbursement program. Okay. You will fill out the reimbursement form. It's very similar to the other one, just a little bit easier to follow along. And then we will go through the approval process and give you an actual final client aid approval form, so you know that it has been in process and we're waiting for the county to send us the funds so we can pay you. David, you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is a revised fact sheet that Grace had created before. Again, just outlining that it's a little bit simpler. Okay, so we've outlined how much we have available in funds, and there's the procedures outlined again. So I will send you this fact sheet, and keep in mind that if it's a motel stay, the idea is for it to be for a maximum stay of 1 week. Give us as much information as possible. We have some flexibility. If you see something that doesn't quite fit exactly what we're saying it covers, let us know. We can take a look at it. If there needs to be an extension for a few days past the week, we will evaluate it and get back to you right away. Next slide. So this is the new form. Okay, it will be a fillable PDF. It's much easier to complete. Okay. I'm just trying to keep this simple here. I think this will be less cumbersome for you. You can see we cover rental, motel vouchers, transportation, prevention, treatment fees. We've added driver's license and birth certificates because that's been one of those stumbling blocks. And my understanding, and Sherry or Haley can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but certain types of housing funds you can't dip into more than one fund for. So work with your service provider. They'll know if we can use the client aid funds for your request. And then you can scroll to the last page, David. So this is just what you're going to get. That will be a package. Okay, and remember, when you turn in the reimbursement form, send in the invoices of who you paid. So the idea is we are paying the cities. These are not requests from the service provider. The cities will lay it out, work with the service provider can help you get the reservation for the motel, but the cities will actually be the one responsible. So I kept that pretty simple. Does anybody have any questions about client aid? Okay, I must have done a really good job. And I just want to add one thing about HomeShare South Bay, that a couple of weeks ago we launched a media kit, and you cities have done an amazing job already. 8 cities have already posted HomeShare South Bay on their social media pages. They've been adding it to websites, newsletters, and we really appreciate this collaboration, and I'll keep you posted and see if we can get some matches going. So anyway, I don't want to use up too much time because we have a lot more on the plate. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you. And if you haven't seen the media kit for HomeShare South Bay, please let us know. And we want everybody to use it on their own personal media as well. You know, if you tweet out, you can tweet out about HomeShare. Any questions for Lori? The client aid is only going to be helpful if people use it. So please remember that we have it there, and it is good until December. So, okay. The next speaker is not on the agenda, but we always have her speak when she's here, and she does have some things to say. And that's Ashley O from the Homeless Initiative. Ashley.
Thanks, Jackie. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for introducing me. I just want to share 2 quick updates with our South Bay COG partners. One is the status of the board-approved Blue Ribbon Commission on Homelessness. As you guys may be aware, this was established in July. And the task is to review the existing JPAs, as well as to produce recommendations in terms of what is the most ideal governance structure as it relates to the continuum of care. And certainly this is going to be a very highly engaging process, as it's going to be a public process. What I can advise you is on August 10th, the board took another action by approving the commissioners that had been nominated. We had 1 commissioner nominated by each supervisor, and representing District 1 Supervisor Solis, we have Sarah DeSol. District 2 Supervisor Mitchell, we have LaShera Porter, and she's actually one of the executives in the St. Joseph Center. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with her name. So it's really great to have a homeless service provider's perspective. I hear Sherry nodding. And then for District 3 Supervisor Kuehl's office, we have Wendy Grohl. For District 4 Supervisor Hahn's office, we have Vanessa Sedano, and she's also with the Whole Child, another homeless service provider. And for District 5 Supervisor Barber's office, we have Scott Street, and I believe he's an attorney. We also have an appointee representing Contract Cities Association, and his name is Marcel Rodarte, who's the executive director of the association. And then we have two cities represented, as we have two appointees for councils of governments. So we have our very own Redondo Beach Council member, Christian Horvath. And we also have Monrovia City Council member, Becky Shevlin, and she's also the president of the San Gabriel Valley COG. So right now that makes 8 commissioners, and we are awaiting for nominees from City of LA, because the LA City Council president can nominate 3, and the mayor's office could nominate 1. So with that, on August 31st, which is yesterday, the Board of Supervisors approved retaining the executive director. Her name is Mary Wickham. She was actually the former county council who also has extensive understanding of the homelessness system as well as the JPAs. So she'll be coming on as of, I believe, this week, so that we could really plan out what the first meeting might look like. We do not have the first meeting date yet, you guys. But as soon as I obtain that date, I'll be sharing it with the COGs so that they could share with you guys as well. Again, we strongly encourage our COG partners and city partners to really listen in and really share their perspectives. And I think what's also going to be important is we're not sure if there's going to be any ad hoc committees or subcommittees, which may also potentially present opportunities to also be able to share your perspectives as well. But definitely, I think at this time, to really be able to coordinate with the 3 representatives representing the cities, I think they really need to be able to be your voice and to be able to share your requests, ideas, or concerns, and especially recommendations. The website will be set up. Oh, Jackie, were you piping in?
No, I was gonna, when you're done with that, I want to add a little bit about the COGs. Yeah.
Of course. So we are also going to be setting up a public interfacing website. And that's also probably will happen next week, hopefully. If not, again, at the minimum, I will be sharing the first meeting date and time with you. So with that, Jackie, go ahead and maybe we could take some questions if they have any.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that first of all, I talked to Christian and he said that the meetings are going to be for 6 months, and they're going to be, right now they're talking about 6-hour meetings. So these people will have, you'll recognize them by the bags under their eyes, I guess. So, and I did want to say that the COGs, I meet monthly with the executive directors of all the other COGs, and it is extremely important to the other COGs that we all share what's going on. So Christian and Becky are not going to be just representing their cities or even their COGs, but they will be briefed by a group of all the other COGs will be receiving the agendas and will send in their comments to Christian and Becky. Ronson will be part of briefing them, and we're taking this extremely seriously, and we are representing the COGs of Los Angeles and the cities of Los Angeles County. So if you have thoughts on what's going on at the Blue Ribbon Commission, please send any information or any thoughts to me, Ronson, or Christian, and we want to make sure that they speak up for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Did anyone have any questions for Jackie or me? Or comments?
Okay, you want to go on?
Yeah. And another just quick update. Past couple meetings, I've shared with you that pursuant to the board's directives on April 20th, the Chief Executive Office is conducting another public process to reassess county's homeless strategies. We actually have dates set, so we want to make sure that these are also on your calendar. And at these meetings, we would have created a draft set of recommendations for revising and refining homeless strategies, because at these public meetings, we need a starting point, right, guys? And during these community sessions, we hope to be able to briefly present it to you And then also to have breakout sessions, because it's going to be difficult to have very large one session where we could really take a deeper dive on certain components. So the 2 dates that's relevant to you will be, there is one Cities and COG session on October 20th. It's a little later in the game, but it was, I think, the only date that worked. From 9:30 to 11:30, it's a 2-hour session, and it's a virtual meeting. And I certainly hope that you'll share this meeting notification with any city people who would be interested, and of course, COGS. And then we have a second session that you might also be interested in. So the Citizen COG session in October is going to be very Citizen COG centric, right? Whereas for SPA 8 session, and we are going to be piggybacking on SPA 8 Coalition's regular September meeting. And Nancy, thank you so much for your accommodation and partnership. That's on September 20th at 9:30 to 11:30. Did I get the date right, Nancy?
Close. It's Wednesday, the 22nd, and we meet from 10 until 12. So we have an extended meeting that particular day. So, and I'll be sending out meeting information as well. So, but thank you for mentioning that.
No, of course. So September 22nd, you guys. So keep in mind that we are having 8 sessions. So SPA 8 will be later in September. We're also having a dedicated session with the homeless service providers, as well as a separate session with people with lived experience. And then of course, we're having a specific one with the county departments as well. So I will also be, I'll also email this to our COG partners as well, so that you guys could put a placeholder. And again, all these are virtual meetings and everyone's welcome. Does anyone have any questions, or if also anyone else want to jump in and add anything, I welcome that too. All right, more to come. Back to you, Jackie.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we nothing. Okay, so we you guys really rose to the occasion. We issued a call for projects. The county is going to be granting the councils, our Council of Governments, based on our homeless population, $1.9 million between January 2022 and June of 2023. And so, as you know, we issued a call for projects. August 10th was the deadline. We crossed our fingers and hoped that somebody would come in with projects. You know, were you really going to do this? And the good news, the really wonderful news, I guess, is that we have $3.6 million worth of projects for $1.9 million worth of funds. So this is an embarrassment of riches, you could say, I guess. A lot of interest. I think it's 9 cities that came in, and we also have some continuing projects. So there was a group that reviewed them, and I want to thank San Gabriel Valley for lending us a person to help review. And we also had a reviewer locally, and I really appreciate the help, but we learned 2 things. The review is done by, the final review is done by Lori, David, and I. And we learned 2 things. One was that we're not very good experts at this, and we wanted to delay because we really want Ronson's input. This is going to be the work program of the COG starting in January for the next year and a half, and it would be pretty good for him to be a part of the decisions that are being made. So we're postponing it for a month. We're hoping to go to our board in October with the final projects. But the second thing we learned was that our application process didn't seem to be that good, because we had more questions than we had answers. Every single application seemed like, well, what about this and what about that? And so what we'd like to do now is and so I'm giving you a heads up, once Ronson comes on next week, we'd like to set up meetings with the proposers for those projects that I don't know if we'll do all of them, but many of them we had questions about. And so we want to drill a little deeper. The disparity of how much money we have versus how much money we can give out is great enough that we really need to take our time and be very surgical about what we do. Unless Ashley wants to write us another $1 million check, which we'll take that too. So that's where we are right now. And it won't come back to the next homeless committee. And I guess what I can promise you is, hopefully the next homeless committee is November 3rd. I'm hoping we'll have this done by the end of October. What I can promise you is, and please write this down, who's ever taking the notes, that we will send to all of you on the homeless task force distribution list what the recommendation going to our board of directors will be, so that if you want to come and testify and say anything, you'll have the opportunity to speak about the proposals. We'll also be discussing them at our steering committee, and so we will let you know what the process is and what the recommendations are in advance, so you can provide your input. Ashley's got her hand up. I guess she is going to write that check. Ashley?
I don't know. I might defer that to Lily here. Lily Sophia. I just wanted to say, hey, Jackie, I know that the process is very rigorous and there's always untested territory. So if there's any way I could support you on that process, I'm here for you. But thank you for the update. I'm really feeling very encouraged by it. Thank you.
Yes, yeah. It's a really great news story that is presenting us with, oh my gosh, now what do we do? So, so any other comments? Lori or David, did you want to add any comments? And Ronson's got his work cut out for him. So I don't know if Ronson, you wanted to add any comments?
Yeah, I had a first glance at some of these proposals, and yeah, they're all very, very interesting, and some really good ideas out there. I'd say, like, when we reach out, maybe start thinking about how you can maybe segment some of your projects, if that's at all possible. I think that would be really helpful, so that we know that, maybe we can fund partial 50%, whatever it may be. If we have to, if push comes to shove, we can slice and dice your project a little bit. I think that would be really helpful.
Great comment. Yeah. Okay. So you'll hear a lot more about that, and we got our work cut out for us. So the next item on the agenda, we're delighted to have two legislative representatives, I think only two, Janet Christian from Senator Feinstein's office, and Jeanette Christian, and Janet Turner from Ted Lieu's office. So Jeanette, do you want to go first? Do you have a legislative update? Jeanette Christian, are you there?
Hi, Jackie. It's Jeanette. Hi. I wasn't
Yes.
expecting to give an update today, but I'm happy to just say the Senate is actually still in recess. We'll be back next week. And obviously, as everyone knows, the big news in DC will be the infrastructure and the bipartisan infrastructure plan, which the Senate already passed, and the upcoming budget reconciliation. And we do see a lot of housing and homelessness services in both of those. We'll see how they're negotiated out, and we'll give you an update as soon as we have one.
Great.
But those details are, just like earmarks, which we still don't know about for some of those cities that had some, we'll know in probably mid-September, and we'll keep you updated. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Janet from Ted Lieu's office.
So thanks for not mentioning Jeanette, so I can do it. That Congressman Lieu is working with Senator Feinstein on a homelessness bill, that they're working very hard to try to get included in the infrastructure reconciliation bill. So fingers crossed on that, because that would give lots of wonderful grants to various cities to improve their homeless services. So yeah, that negotiation is still going on, and they'll be coming back from Congress's recess very shortly. Although I do understand behind the scenes, a lot of work is still going on. And in the meantime, we're just kind of watching the rollout of the American Rescue Plan money. As you know, 4.75 in Section 8 housing vouchers to help house the homeless. Each of your cities has received their allotment. So we're hoping, and I know they will be used quickly and efficiently and productively. And then I just, 26 billion went for emergency rental assistance to help prevent homelessness. And the state of California, I probably don't have your state person here today. I just noticed it has everything organized for that. And you can start referring people to the state of California to see if they qualify for that assistance. There's a lot of money that was given, very little has been used so far. So we're hoping that will be taken care of. To do that, they contact the California Rent Relief Center. And if you have a pencil and paper, the number is 833-430-2122. That's 833-430-2122. If somebody is looking for rental relief, they can determine if they qualify. So we're hoping to get that money that's been approved out to help people prevent homelessness when possible, and of course to address homelessness. And hopefully we'll have a lot more to update you with in November. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Janet. I want to make sure that before I call on Lori, that there's nobody else here from a legislative office that I missed. So please pipe up if I've missed your name. Okay, Lori, you had your hand up.
I did, and I'm not from a legislative office. I hope this is appropriate, but SB 9 and SB 10 got voted down, and my understanding is it's going to our current governor of California's desk for signing.
They didn't get voted down, they got voted up.
Okay, excuse me, you're right. Okay. I'm looking at it a certain way. Okay, so I'm just wondering if people would contact the governor's office to possibly encourage him to reconsider this. If they took a vote on these, they never would have passed from constituents. So I don't really understand it, but in my opinion, it's not doing anything to get us more affordable housing. So I think we should try and one last ditched effort to reach out to the governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. The next item is South Bay legislative updates. And as you know, you probably know, the South Bay Board of Directors has been very interested in defeating SB 9 and 10. But one of the things we are doing, we are, and it is a lot of the reason is that we don't think it's going to create affordable housing. One of the things we are doing is we just hired a firm to work with us on SCAG projects to look at ADUs, accessory dwelling units in the South Bay, other opportunities to build housing in the South Bay, so that we can help our cities address some of the requirements that there are coming down. And that person started today, pretty exciting. So we will, as we learn more about what we're learning about South Bay housing opportunities, I can bring those back here. Of course, that's a lot farther than, that's a long-term help for a homeless person, but that's where we are. We are also beginning the planning for our General Assembly, which is our big conference on March 17th. So save the date, March 17th. Our fiber project is, we've hooked up about 20 sites in the South Bay, all the city halls and several agencies. And now we're working to try to find opportunities to bring the fiber to neighborhoods and to businesses. One of the things that we are trying to work on something with District 2, and we are also working on something in Wilmington that would create an opportunity for neighborhoods to have a center that would help to delete the digital divide. We're also working with LA County and their digital divide initiative, so that we can take this fiber network, this treasure that we've created, and make it actually work for our cities, our businesses, and our constituents. We're working very hard on the local travel network. The local travel network is for slow speed vehicles, to encourage them. For people that don't have a lot of money and don't want to buy a car, many trips are 3 miles or less, 70% in the South Bay. And if we can find safe places, which would be what the local travel network is, people could get rid of a car and buy a bike with a what am I talking about? A storage thing on the back, or a neighborhood electric vehicle for less than $10,000. And it's a cheaper way to get around, and it handles local trips. So we're trying to promote that, and it would decrease congestion on our major arterials. So those are the kinds of things we're doing. What am I leaving out, David? Is there something else I should be saying?
No, I think that was it. Those are the big things.
Okay. And, we're planning to continue, I think, Ronson and I can talk about this. We're planning to continue these meetings by Zoom. They aren't Brown Act meetings. I don't know how you feel about that. We might have to go to Brown Act meetings, as you know, by in October. But at this point, I think we're getting great participation. And if you want to let us know, you might want to, send us your informal thoughts about whether you want to go back to regular meetings or as long as we have to have masks on, I figure we might as well stay on Zoom. So is there anything else, any other announcements that anybody wants to make? I want to thank Lori, who has done an incredible job of trying to put her fingers in all the holes that have been left in this operation. And Ronson's going to be really lucky to have Lori working with him. But I want to thank her for filling in all those spots while we didn't have a person. So thank you, Lori. And with that, I think we can adjourn till November 3rd. Thank you all for coming.
Bye.
Thank you.